There's a cat over here. There's a cat over there. And the wrong one died. And the wrong one died.
Welcome to The Wrong Cat Died, the podcast breakdown of the catastrophe. I'm your host, Mike Abrams, and today we have a little bit of a different guest today. To my knowledge, he's never been on Broadway, and I don't think he's ever been in a production of Cats. However, he's an incredible DJ who you can frequently see at Tavern on Camac in Philadelphia or on one of the many live DJ rides on your Peloton. He also happens to be a big fan of Cats, which is why we are here today. So welcome, DJ John Michael, and thank you for joining me.
What's up? How you doing?
I am excited to talk to you. I know, we kind of talked a little before, and I did kind of give you I'm not happy that there's only one Peloton ride with Cats, but let's not start with that. I want to talk about your history with the show, because I know you're a fan. I kind of realized that you're a fan just based off of some of the mutual people we follow on social media, but tell me about your history with the show, your first experience with the show.
So I feel like if you lived in New York City, there were two commercials, at least for Broadway, that you would see all the time. One was for Cats, and there were several versions of it, but one was definitely for Cats, and one was for the Milford Plaza, which had like the Lullaby of Broadway song in it, and it was like a whole big thing. And I've actually posted about this on Instagram before, but I felt like that was always on television, and I think that's where I first encountered it and was just like, I was a kid though. Had to have been at least 10 years old. I would say I didn't really go full force into Cats until I was probably 13 or 14 when I'd seen it for the first time.
Okay, so this was probably 90s, right? 80s,
yeah, this
90s
is like 90
when the commercial was out.
Yeah, I want to say that I probably saw it for the first time in 93 or 94.
Okay, so your first experience was original Broadway production.
Yes.
Wow. Lucky you.
Crazy. And it got to a point where we would go, and this is terrible that I'm even going to say this on a podcast and actually put it down somewhere, but we didn't have money because I was young. I was barely in high school, if anything, as I got a little bit older, and we used to sneak in the second act during the intermission and would just stand, because they used to sell standing room tickets along the back of the orchestra. And we would sneak in during the intermission and would just stand there in the back and hope that nobody noticed us. And so we would just second act the show all the time.
So wait, was your first
Can't
time
do that anymore.
Only seeing the second act?
No. I had seen the full show, but then when I wanted to go back, like I couldn't afford as such a young kid living in Staten Island. Yeah,
too. Broadway shows are. I mean, they've done a lot to become more affordable and give people the opportunity to go see it. But generally, they're not the cheapest tickets. And so, okay, so your first time, you're a teenager. How much of the show did you pick up? Like, because I've been having this conversation recently with a lot of people that I've always thought kids shouldn't go, but now I'm kind of changing my mind that maybe kids can go because it all goes over their heads. Adults realize how dark it is, but the teenagers kind of that interesting mix of where you're probably old enough to get some of the themes, but maybe not old enough to really realize that it's coming out in this musical.
Well, yes, definitely. Well, I mean, if you watch that commercial, it was definitely marketed as like the family musical. It was marketed for kids 100%, because they would always show, them holding the kids in the commercial, and it was just very sort of like geared up that way.
Yes. Hold on. The one thing that has been a constant from every person that has been in the show that's told me is like, okay, the one source of truth we know of, we can debate family trees and all these other stuff, but Demeter was being sexually abused. That's like the one thing they all are like, yeah, I mean, that's just known fact. And so it's like, that's the part I really struggle with, is that I watched it from this lens of the storytelling. And I'm like, this is kind of a dark show. I got children to my right and left, like watching this. And then I realized, okay, it's going over their head, but it's not. I mean, it's so dark in a lot of places, and the ball is an orgy.
Well, and yes. And it's going over a lot of their heads too, because I mean, if you think of that, these are the original like T.S. Eliot poems. A lot of them don't really relate to one another in the show. It's sort of like, Andrew Lloyd Webber found a way to sort of Rodgers and Hammerstein this whole thing, where it's like, Rodgers and Hammerstein in the old musicals, they would have these beautiful, beautiful songs, but they didn't take you anywhere in the show. So like the song would start, you'd have Some Enchanted Evening would happen. And then at the end of that song, you were still in the exact same place as when you started the song. Lloyd Webber kind of found a way to make this sort of odd through line throughout the whole thing. So
Yeah, through line is that's generous.
Very generous.
I I do love that. Like one of the things I found researching this show is that the Grisabella's poem didn't make the book because it was too dark for children.
Yeah.
So we're basing an entire children's potential musical on a poem that was too dark for children.
But thanks to the brilliance of Gillian Lynn, she was able to make it a complete fantasy. And I think that is what drew me more than anything else. Because I mean, at that point in my life, there's a lot of things at play. I mean, I'm not yet out of the closet. So this was sort of that first foray into being around people that I could identify as being like me. And also, I was really, really big into dance from 13 to 16. I took ballet for 3 years. And I was, yes, in a very local, very regional production of Cats on Staten Island.
Whoa, wait a second. That's
Which is
plot twist. Okay, hold on.
Yeah.
Who did you play?
I was one of the only men that could sing, really. So they kind of used me throughout, but like I was some sort of weird Rum Tum Tugger Munkustrap hybrid.
Okay. So you got all the singing roles, basically.
Basically. So I was like singing the old Gumby Cat, but I was also the Rum Tum Tugger and just like running around for crazy quick change and like throwing different tails onto different wigs. And yeah.
Wow. So regional production, when was this? In the 90s?
This is probably like 96 or 97.
And how old were you when this was happening?
16, 17.
16, okay.
Yeah.
So 16, 17, you're Tugger, which is an interesting one because you get like very sexual, kind of get to, you know, throw your crotch around everyone, which is a little interesting for a 16-year-old to be doing for production in front of friends and family, I'm sure. Yes,
100%. But you know, again, I feel like part of this is that like when I look back at it now through like 2022 eyes, it all seems so bizarre and so completely off the wall. But back then it was just like, I'm going to throw this makeup on my face. I'm going to put a leotard on and I'm just going to sing these songs that I really like. You know, it wasn't really, there was no, that connection didn't exist for me.
I do think your entry point to the musical is a really important part to how you view the musical, because your entry point was, as you said, a point in your life where you were not out, a point where you're probably, you know, you're younger. So it's some of those stuff is going to go right over your head and not realize how, you know, some of those themes. For me, I watched it. First of all, I walked in with absolutely no idea what I was seeing besides that it was going to be cats dancing, and I knew Memory, and that was it.
Yeah.
I knew nothing else about the show when I walked in, and I love sitcoms. I love like neat and tidy writing, and I got none of that. So I started to piece together some of those things more so than that. I'm like, this Victoria dance, which is the coming of age, I was like, it looks like they're kind of doing it on stage. Like,
again, the brilliance of Gillian Lynn.
Yeah, I mean, and so it's just so interesting of like the people who see it as a very young kid have a different perspective than someone seeing it like me at that point in my frame of two. Like I had just moved to New York. I had not been to that much on Broadway at the time. I'd been to a little bit. And I got a very unique experience, but
well, and I think it's funny too because there's this trend on TikTok that I see people doing where they talk about, you know, songs that we listened to in the 90s that we didn't really know what they were singing about until now, and they always use like Mariah Carey's "Honey," and I'm like, that's a really like overtly sexual song, just full of innuendo, and people are now just sort of like looking back and being like, what were we singing along to? I feel like Cats is sort of that same kind of thing.
Yeah, it definitely is. I think it didn't pretend to be anything else, though. It's just like because of the way it is, and it's so, like you said, Gillian Lynn did a really good job of putting it together in a way that's so beautiful and masterful, and a lot of other pieces that you can kind of forget some of that stuff. And that's the part that, like, when I walked out, and you know, everyone thought I hated it. I didn't hate it. When I walked out, I was mesmerized by like, I can't believe that the Mungo Jerry Ripple teaser dance, like that was incredible. And then I learned years later in this podcast that they're doing it on a rake stage, which means it's on a slant. And so it's like all of a sudden it's just like, holy cow, these people are some of the most talented people you ever meet doing this incredibly physical show. And if you took out the bad writing, the through line, I would have been like, all right, I'm here for it.
Well, and that's why I think I spent so many years defending that show as like being one of my favorite shows. Now, when I say my favorite show, I mean, in a time before the internet, I'm tracking down the Hungarian cast recording and the Japanese cast recording. And I'm finding as many imports as I can. There used to be a record store in Times Square called Colony Records that they would sell imports. And then there was another one in the East Village called Footlight Records where they would also sell these imports from other places, and trying to track down, because what I learned was that each cast recording was a little bit different. The musicality were, how it was orchestrated would be a little bit different. Some would have more guitar, some would have more drums. And I was always so interested in how these things would get translated from cast to cast. So I was really in it and seeing how they do. And it's funny because actually in one of, I think it might've been Claire's interview that I listened to, where you were talking about the cat Cassandra.
Yeah.
And I heard you talking about her, which was so funny. And I was like, oh, I know exactly who that is. She's like the Siamese type of cat. And the thing that's funny, and what I love about Lloyd Webber, is that when you listen to Jellicle Songs for Jellicle Cats, there's a part in there with the whole thing about something with the Sphinx, and there's a little bassoon in the background that's and does this sort of Middle Eastern type of sound. In the show, that's a part where Cassandra also comes out and does a little thing. So there are things in the music that sort of allude to who they are and where they came from. And I feel like that's one of the things that I always liked about Lloyd Webber, was that there are those little things if you listen to them.
Yeah,
that give you clues.
I love hearing you talk about this, because it is another piece that I find so fascinating with the show, is the perspective that you come through. So I'm not a dancer and I'm not a musician. You being a DJ and a musician, you hear that and that right away. And for me, my mom's a piano teacher, so I was like, I kind of knew the memory piano. That's what the tuner used all the time to tune the piano. But I knew I went from the writing angle. And so you said, hey, there's the nuances of the songs. That
sounds like a rough angle.
Well, it's a different, I picked the wrong one, because the dancers really appreciated everything they saw. The set designers talked about how great it is. The musicians talk about the way it was pieced together. But the writer here has to deal with the really crappy through line. But you're talking about the other productions. Thing I noticed that they name cats differently in the other productions. So some of them have been named, and Vienna, it's in German. So that's one I'm I kind of want to hear that, just to hear.
I have it. I can send it to you.
I love it. Just a very different language, singing very beautiful songs in some cases in a harsher language. But there's a Japanese cat that's named Gilbert. Gilbert's not in any other production. 2016, there was a Peter. Peter's not in any other one of these productions. So it's they renamed cats too in the different productions. So even as the writer, I'm going they're writing the slight nuances difference into these stories based on geographically where they're doing it.
Yeah. And it's weird because the Japanese, and I don't know if this is with all the cast recordings, but I found this for Phantom too, because I was a sick Lloyd Webber fan for so long, is that they would do the studio cast recording, and then sometime later they would do a live recording that they would record at the theater and then put that version out too. So there's actually two Japanese ones of Cats, one live and one studio.
Wow.
There is nowhere else on earth that I have ever been able to expel this information.
This is the vehicle I'm here for, is to allow people like you, fans like you, to come out and talk about this inner sanctum of this knowledge you have. So you said earlier, though, you mentioned you saw it as a teenager, and then you saw the second act a bunch.
A whole bunch. And I actually,
times, allegedly.
Yes, allegedly. And I actually auditioned for the touring cast twice.
Okay, so you start by seeing it, then you do it in Staten Island. You kind of you get your way to the second act a couple times in standing room. How many times total have you seen it?
I mean, I'm not counting the movies and different things. It's probably about 14 or 15.
14 or 15 times, mostly on Broadway.
Mostly on Broadway, yes.
Okay, have you seen it anywhere else?
Besides Staten Island. No, which nobody saw that. Believe me, nobody saw that. Barely my family saw that. I feel like I saw maybe a touring cast in Jersey once, but I think they were mostly all Broadway. Yeah, because even when my husband and I have been together for 8 years, and we've seen it once or twice, and I think they were actually both on Broadway before it finally shut down.
Okay, so 14 times, and you clearly have a fan. You also, how much does this come up? For me, it comes up a lot because of this podcast.
Yeah.
How much does Cats come up in your life?
Well, not as much as it used to. So I would say the years from when I was 13 to 17, so 93 to 97, I was heavy into it. And that's when, like I said, all the geeky stuff of finding the different cast recordings and, getting different playbills and like finding people on, and not even online, but like there was somebody that I was literally writing letters to in Binghamton, New York, that would have these like bootlegs of the cast recordings of shows that would like copy cassettes and send them to me. It was like this black market behind the scenes of these like trading things way before the internet. So crazy. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. That was such a heavy time in my life where I was so into that. And now only my closest friends really sort of know
until now, your fandom is going to become public.
I know. And so now it's like, and that's why like for the last few days since we spoke, since you contacted me, I was like replaying all of these things in my head. And I messaged one of my best friends from that time, my friend Chris. And I was like, oh my God, I cannot believe this is happening. And I was like, how far deep do I go into this? I was like, because we used to have VHS tapes with literally anything that mentioned the musical. There was a TV show called Caroline in the City. Leah Thompson was the main star. Her roommate was in the show Cats in the show. And so we would record all of those because I was like, in case she's going to, and sometimes they would go to the Winter Garden Theater. And then there was like the Fame episode where they had, a whole thing from Cats in there and make sure that we see that. And anything that was involved in the show, I was into, because again, it was really, for me, was the dancing and the music. I didn't realize that there was even like a story, quote unquote, until many years later. And I was like, oh, I definitely never got that, but okay.
I love it. Have you kept up with that? There's a lot more references recently.
I mean, I've only seen, like, I saw the movie and I was I don't know how far we want to go into this. I didn't love it. There was a lot of things with the movie that I was very upset by. But then I heard Andrew Lloyd Webber talk about it and also like in a disparaging way. So I was like, I don't feel so bad.
Yeah, he backtracked. A lot of people backtrack from the movie. So there's a couple. Let's get to the new movie, but there's been a couple, not super recent, but Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt had a Cats storyline. Family Guy.
Yes, I've seen that.
Then Modern Family had a great episode where Tugger gets stuck in the tree.
Yep. I actually just saw that the other day.
Yeah, and then I just saw one. It's not a good one, but Team America really gets after it. With that one. So if you know that, you know what I'm talking about there, that's a whole different story. I just saw that the other day and I forgot about that. And then all of a sudden that line came out and I'm like, oh yeah. Okay. Let's talk about the new movie quickly, because I don't want to give too much time to it, because it was a little bit of a disaster. My gripes with it are probably different than your gripes with it though.
I mean, it's like, it's anything else. Like even with any movie musical that comes out, I try to go into all of them being like, okay, look, this is for a newer audience. This is, whoever's the creative team behind this is going to have their own interpretation of what this all is. But when I started seeing things like, okay, so we're not doing the Gillian Lynn choreography, that made me nervous. I was like, this is not a very easy show to translate musically. And even knowing her choreography as well as I do in my mind, because even when I went for the audition, the two auditions, they make you do the Jellicle Ball. There's like a specific part of the choreography that they make you do. I still know it it's a sickness really, but I knew it before I went to the audition. So I was like, oh, I'm definitely going to get it. And my best friend, Chris, that came with me, watched and also auditioned. And I got down to the second to last cut. And I was like, you have to be alive longer than me for the rest of my life, because you're going to be the only person who can verify that piece of information while I'm alive. So, but yeah, I think that was one of the biggest things that I was like, all right, we'll see, and Andy is very talented. And Andy Blankenbuehler?
Yeah.
Super, super talented. But I think that sometimes, the source material is a little bit difficult. He did well with Skimbleshanks, but even that is such a specific piece of Gillian's choreography that I'm like, oh, all right, wow.
I actually put more of the blame not on Andy Blankenbuehler. I think his choreography was probably fine, but you couldn't see it because they just jumped around so much.
Yes.
So I think that was part where I had trouble analyzing any of the dancing because I couldn't see what was happening. It happened with so many different jump cuts that it was hard to follow. It was
very much filmed like a Britney Spears music video. And it's just very like that cut. And I'm like, all right, we kind of want to see the scenes. That's part of the whole thing, is that if you're not watching it for the dancing, like, and I appreciate them trying to make more of a story, but I'm like, McCavity speaking? What is going on? Like, I don't even know. Like, Idris, how did you get involved in this?
Well, that's the question for a lot of them.
Yeah.
They did try, like, there is no dialogue in
Yeah.
the musical, and so
Yeah.
adding dialogue, I actually thought Victoria's the vehicle was a smart way to do it. I thought the McCavity was the attempt at conflict resolution,
Yeah.
but it didn't really work.
No. And I didn't need Taylor Swift's song in there.
I didn't mind it as much as everyone else did, but I think it was more just because I love I love the song McCavity, and that kind of led into that. And so I was like, all right, we're getting to the part I like. Also, that was at the point where I realized how much was still left when I was seeing it, and I'm like, okay, like, a lot of movie left here, and this has not gotten any better. I think that the part that still blows my mind, again, thinking about it from almost a business angle, they launched the trailer the same day as Top Gun, and which the Top Gun trailer, which I guess is probably maybe not the same audience, but like mega movie that still hasn't come out. But I mean, a trailer that has a bigger budget than the amount they wasted on Cats came out same day. And then it launched on the weekend of a major, I think it was a Marvel movie, some other big movie launched the exact same weekend. And this was pre-pandemic, so this was like everyone going in 2019. I was like, this is there's some just choice decisions. Yeah. On top of the like actual creative decisions in the movie. I feel like, and this is part of the problem with movie musicals now, is that I feel like they relied so heavily on star power that it almost, but I mean, like, you throw Taylor Swift in there, and you throw, all these other big names in this movie. That's what I mean. Like, there was a lot of big names, Jennifer Hudson, and I'm like, oh, like, as soon as they said Jennifer Hudson, I was like, well, clearly she's going to slay Memory. I was like, that's going to be great. But then, like, even when I saw her makeup, I was like, yeah, I don't know. So it's like little pieces like that leading up to it. I went in there cautiously optimistic, but I don't know. There was a lot of things that were amiss. And again, it's not the easiest thing to translate in many ways, but Judi Dench talking directly to me to end the movie was also like what sealed the deal. And then I saw a press viewing of it. So not like the major opening, but it was everyone that had to be invited by the studio or the media to get it. So this should be a crowd that is appropriate and handled. This isn't like, a Rocky Horror Picture viewing. Like, it should be a crowd. And about 10 minutes in, people started laughing. And that's when I knew, like, if this crowd can't take this serious, you've got a problem with this movie. Yeah. And like within the first song, I immediately was just like, oh, this is going to get panned really, really bad, especially by the Broadway community, who I'm sure was not thrilled about this to even start off with. Yeah, it made for really great, as someone who was trying to keep some parody into this podcast and like the humor from it, it was just endless material for me. Well, and the thing that I didn't get either was that, there are some people that, are around today that could easily have done this and stepped in and done really well with this. And it was just very sort of like mind blowing, where I'm like, okay, you've got the budget, you've got the money to throw at talent. The orchestrations were nice. Like, it sounded good. I like the way the music sounded in a lot of it, but I don't know. It was just very, very weird. But I also feel like Lloyd Webber walked into a trap with the Phantom of the Opera movie too. I didn't love it. Yeah. I wanted to like it, but it's just the casting. I was like, no, I don't want to be mean, but I didn't really need Gerard Butler as the Phantom. Like, he's a name, but you got to really be able to sing. Yeah, that was the Les Mis criticism too. Yeah, and that's what I mean. So I feel like that's, one of the only ones that fared so well was, I thought, Chicago. And they had big names in there, but they were big names that could handle doing it. I think Catherine Zeta-Jones did better than Renee Zellweger, but, it's a beautiful looking movie and it's done well. Yeah, that movie it lends to a movie though really well, whereas Cats doesn't. Well, that's the other thing too, because it was like the weird sizes of things where it's like sometimes they're like normal size when I'm looking at like me or you. And then there's other times where like things are absolutely enormous. And I'm like, it was so weird. Let's just say decisions were made. And now everybody who's been involved has backtracked. Yeah. Which should tell you all you need to know about it. Well, and even from the filmed version that they did of the musical in, what was it? 98. 98. Yeah. Like,
that I was just like, all right, well, this is it. And you've got Jacob Brent is in it, and you've got
Yeah.
a lot of the mainstays from the Broadway cast. I'm not going to lie, I was kind of mad that Betty Buckley wasn't in it. I love Elaine Page more than life itself. I really wanted Betty, but I get it. She was the first. But yeah, I don't. It's a really hard thing to pull off not in the theater.
Yeah, and I loved how they did the 98 movie because they did a little bit of extra for it, but nothing that was like, just like some from Mistopheles, some extra flair, but nothing that's going to really change the show. Like you got the experience of the show.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Side note, have you seen the YouTube performance of Mr. Mistopheles, the really bad one?
The Miss
Yes.
Mistopheles?
Yes.
I have. I got cued to it a couple months ago. I reached out to the theater.
Stop.
To see if they would even just tell me who the cast was at the time, because it was years ago. I found the theater. I'm not gonna blow them up.
Okay. Yeah.
But I can send it to you after. I found the theater. I found the production. There is no playbill or anything on their website. And I sent a email asking about that production. Nothing else queued to it, just to see if I get a response, and I have not heard back. So I would love to talk to the person, because I firmly believe that at this point they know they're viral.
They would have to.
But I'm assuming they have to be good humored about it, because there are two. That's one. There's a couple people on my dream list to talk to for this.
He's one of them.
He's one of them. Really high up there, because I think I'm really hopeful that he's good humored about it.
Yeah.
Because from what I heard, this is the rumor mill backstory is that person was very heavily involved either with that theater, and so it was a very last second, we need somebody to hop on.
Got it.
He knows the choreography. He's not really talented enough to do it, but at least it's probably better than nothing, because it's not, a very small local theater.
Yeah.
You don't have a swing that's going to hop in. You don't have the same production.
Absolutely.
And so I hope that he gets it. My number two, and I know who they are, and I have outreach, but I understand why they probably don't want to come on or answer me. I want to talk to the original Street Tugger.
Oh.
Which was the London production where they made Tugger a rapper.
Yeah.
Very high up. I want to know how that was taught to them, what the thought was, how they were explained this, because it's one of those things where I'm sure the production, I'm sure the person who did it did an amazing job.
Mm-hmm.
It was just such a bad decision by whoever made that decision.
But even his song, the lyrics are strange, when you really sit down and go through them, and it's hearing how they've all sort of, taken it on from Terrence Mann onward or whatever, but it's, yeah.
And then
there's so many things
Weber. That's my last one, but he'll never come on.
Hey, you never know. Did you see he's a DJ now too?
I saw him DJ. The problem if he comes on, though, the podcast ends, because he'll definitively answer my question about if Isabella should die or not. And so I'm okay with that. But there's a couple others I would like to get. But the Mistopheles is high up there.
Oh, without a doubt.
And I have tried a lot to figure that out. More than I wish to say I've devoted to this podcast.
That would be such a great guess. I'm manifesting this for you.
I have the right people. I just need them to answer me. Well, and then I also need to find that person, because the other thing is it happened so long ago. It's you can generally find a lot of people on social media. I don't have the.
Do you know what year that was?
Name. It was in the 90s, I think, or maybe early 2000s. I can look it back. I can look it up after. I'll send you the website.
Amazing.
We can find this later.
Absolutely.
You can see my investigative journalism happening behind the scenes to try to solve this. But yes, that is a very good one. I've seen some other productions of people. I did see a COVID production where some people sang it together, which that was one where they did the whole 2+ hour show. And a couple of the performers did a really good job, but you can't harmonize over Zoom.
I was going to say.
It was kind of destined to be challenging from the beginning. But it was pretty cool to see a group of just fans really get together and put it together.
Yeah.
So that I've seen some. I did see the Elon University. I did Fergie Philippe, who was in Hamilton. Who I interviewed.
Mhm.
He finally found his version where they did a Beyonce cat and I think they said they did a Trump cat and a couple other ones. So it was a university production for like a weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's some versions out there. You know, I know you got your Japanese albums and stuff like that, but there's some deep cuts out there I can send you.
Look, and I have so many different versions of this cast recording, and just to like, it was really just to hear the Jellicle Ball. That was the thing that I've always been the most interested in on the soundtrack, because I found that piece of music specifically to be so interesting.
And is it very different place to place? That seems like a fairly consistent piece of the show everywhere it goes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm talking more just like for the orchestrations and like
Got it.
how they would translate it into their version, and like, but it's like that with a lot of cast recording, or at least a lot of Lloyd Webber recordings, but where they always will just sort of change things up and try to keep it as, you know, current and new with the times as they can as technology evolves. But
well, that's your Street Tugger. That was the attempt there.
Oh, without a doubt.
So I want to switch gears a little bit, and I want to know, has Cats influenced your DJing career at all? Like, do you mix it into sets at all?
So there have been several dance versions of Memory that have been successful over the years. There was a big one in the 80s by an act called Menage. It was like a high energy record out of maybe France or Italy that a lot of the gay clubs used to play in like the 80s and 90s. It's total camp. I mean, as any Cats remix would be.
Yeah.
I remember in the 90s, there was this, looking back, really terrible act called Harajuku. And I don't actually think they were Japanese, but they would do all these like Broadway dance covers but everything sounded like a LaBouche song. So it was that 90s Euro sort of like whatever, that stuff. And then recently I actually found a remix of Jennifer Hudson's version of Memory that I have played out.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah,
I was wondering how much is out there, because some of the songs don't really lend to it. And some of them I think you could mix into an interesting like EDM style. Like Skimble Shanks would go really well if you remixed it.
Yeah, and I think that's the other thing that I feel like kept my interest about Cats, is that, you know, a lot of songs in Broadway shows are like songs. They're just like songs. It's like a very specific song structure, whereas I feel most of the things in Cats are so, maybe because they're poems, whatever, they're all over the place. You know, they have like, they go so many different places within one song. You know, like McCavity is a good example of that. But I don't know. Memory seems to be the most straightforward of the musical, which is why I'm sure people do it the most.
It's because it's what people know. If you give to a non, just a theater fan who's maybe seen it once, they're gonna remember Memory, and that's it. The rest is like, you know, like I didn't know any of the rest coming in, and then when Memory started, I'm like, oh yeah, I know this one. So that makes sense. I want to go into some of the Cats, and if you were DJing or if they were DJing to them, what type of music or what song specifically do you think would be like their jam? So this is going to go back to a little bit of the personality test here, so I can fill in blanks if you need me. We won't do them all. Okay. But let's start with Tugger.
I mean, I'm not going to lie. I feel like he's either going to be like beast mode hip hop or like rock, but I feel like he listens, I don't want to say not Nickelback, but he listens to like, you know, My Chemical Romance or like that type of rock music, like emo rock. I feel like it's sort
Panic at the Disco type of thing.
So like that type of thing. I feel like that's what it's got the studs on his shoulders and the whole thing. Yeah. I feel like it's very that, like eyeliner.
I love it. What about, I'm going to put Bomb and Demeter together.
They're probably Megan the Stallion stands.
Ooh, I like that. I had him. I kept thinking Madonna, but maybe I went back too far.
I mean, I could see that, but I feel like you get any girl now, and that's, you know, yada 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 yada. They're going to give you some of that.
Love it. This might be the same answer then. What about Victoria, the younger version of them?
No, she's an Ariana Grande fan.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect.
For sure.
Now let's go older. What about Gus?
Gus only wants the pure. He's the purist. He wants the classic. So he doesn't want a Madonna remix. He wants the actual Madonna song. He doesn't want a Cher remix. He wants the actual Cher song. You know, like he's got respect for the voices. He wants to hear Whitney Houston, and he wants to hear, maybe a little bit of Barbara, or even Frank Sinatra. He wants the vocals.
I love it.
Yeah.
I was thinking even further back because I just have this vision of probably because the 98 movie is John Mills, and he was 90 when he did it.
Yes.
So I kept thinking about my grandfather being like, it's got to be something even predating me of like what's the 50s and 60s kind of old,
it's the Chordettes.
Yeah.
Mr. Sandman.
Yeah, exactly. What about Skimbleshanks?
Skimbleshanks. I feel like I could see him like chilling at home to like Stevie Wonder.
Ooh, okay. He's a tough one because there's so many different ways you could look at that character.
Yeah, I feel like he's kind of funky. Like he wants things that are more like upbeat, clearly, but it's everything's got like a groove to it. And he's just so like, I don't know. I just see him like strutting around like.
Yeah, I could see that. Okay,
yeah.
I got two more. We've got to do Mistopheles.
Mistopheles, huge EDM raver.
Yeah.
I mean, clearly you have the light up jacket.
Yep.
You're throwing, special effects all over the place. You've definitely been to EDC a few times.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then the last one is Grisabella.
She probably listens to like Edith Piaf all day. Something very weepy and dramatic and just, black and white movies, Norma Desmond, that sort of thing.
I love it. Absolutely love it.
She's not fun at parties, that one.
No, she might have used to be fun at parties, but not anymore.
So actually, I want to ask you, if the wrong cat died, then who do you think is the one that's supposed to go?
Oh, we're going to get to that.
Okay.
That's the last question. And I'll give you my real answer and the way that this started answer.
Got it.
Because I do think it's evolved over time, which is sad that I've spent so much time on this show that I have evolved my own thought process on it. Let's go into the rapid fire because my last question will be that for you, and then I can happily answer it for you. If you were, you were in the show, but if you could be who did you audition for? Like who would you want to play most?
When we auditioned, it was just an open like cattle call for dancers, so we probably would have been in the chorus. I mean, I always loved Munkustrap. I think also because when I saw it on Broadway, I definitely had a crush on Keith Bernardo, who played it at the time. I thought he was so handsome, but he always sort of, when you see him, and maybe it's just Keith's that I'm remembering. And I think he was the guy in the movie too. I think in the 98 version, I think it was Keith, wasn't it? Or am I wrong on that?
You're talking to the wrong person to answer.
Sorry, I don't know. I'm not 100% sure. It might be him, but either way.
Okay.
But he just always had this sort of like great posture, was like sort of looking out for people, but always had like such a really good like baritone voice, and all the versions that I've heard, and that fit my range. So I just loved his songs. If
I ignore that though, and you could just ignore vocal range, gender, anything. Well, I like hearing the first one, but if you could do anyone, who's there? Like, who would you want to do one time?
Rumpelteazer. Yeah, for sure.
You want to do the cartwheels?
Yeah, I mean, I can't do them, but I think it would be the most fun because when you used to be able to go see the show on Broadway, and I don't know how long, if they did that to the end or not, but in the intermission, they would let you come up on the stage
with Deuteronomy.
Yeah, and like so he would just be up there chilling, and you'd be able to like sort of like walk around and everything, and the stage is so like slippery and made for dancers that I'm like, just being in like a leotard and being able to do all of that Mungo Jerry Rumpelteazer choreography just looks so fun.
I love it. When the old Deuteronomy stayed on, when I saw it the first time, I thought it was a mistake. I was like, are we in intermission? Like the lights came on, but that guy's still up there. And at first I was like, is he there? And then everyone came up and took a selfie, and like, or not everyone, a group. It was like assigned to go up there. And I've talked to a few old Deuteronomies, and I've talked to a few non-old Deuteronomies, because I kept thinking, why would you give up your intermission? And a lot of them are like, the non-old Deuteronomies are like, yeah, he's not on the whole time. Like, he'll be all right. And then the old Deuteronomies are like, it sucks, I got to do this. And then they immediately sing.
Oh,
which is crazy to like sit there dry up there with everyone kind of just like pretending to be this like godlike feature and then immediately sing a song. That's got to be crazy to do.
And it's a crazy song to sing too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so much with this show. Who are your favorite and least favorite cats?
I would say probably Munkustrap, Skimble. I do like Victoria because I loved her dance solo in the original. Jillian's choreography for that was really good. I loved. Why am I drawing a blank? No, it's Bombalurina. Is it Bombalurina or is it Demeter? I don't remember which one.
Bomb is usually the taller one of the two.
Who's the one that sings mostly McCavity?
I think Bomb.
Because I remember Marlena Daniels played her on Broadway and was like the longest running. I think she was in it from like opening to closing or something crazy like that.
Yeah.
She was like the longest. Yeah. She was like literally that role. It looked like it was just second skin for her. She was so fantastic at every time I'd ever seen it that I was like, I would absolutely love to be you for a day.
Yeah.
So her,
Yeah,
for sure.
That's fun. Well, what about least favorite? Do you have a least favorite character?
Least favorite. It's hard. I don't really feel like anybody. This will probably get me excommunicated, but I never really got into Gus that much.
Okay.
It was, but I know, and it's terrible. I shouldn't say he's not my least favorite character because I like when he does the whole the throwback bit and he does the whole tale.
Yep.
Which is again, I'm drawing a
Peaks
blank
and
on.
Follicles?
Thank you.
No, it's the
no.
It's the
What's his name?
Growl Tiger.
Yes, thank you. That part I love, but the whole Gus the Theater Cat song, I'm like, this is like the sleepy section, and I never really got into it that much. And I've seen some really great people do it, but the Growl Tiger bit, excellent. I live for that. Yeah. So
that's not going to lend well for the most common answer for non-Grisabella, which is Gus. It sounds like you're not going to be on that team here.
No.
What's your favorite song? Is it I think you mentioned the ball a bunch of times. Is that your favorite song from the show?
Probably.
Okay.
As a piece of music, yes, but I've probably listened to the opening the most, Jellicle Songs, Jellicle Cats.
Okay. Which cat do you think would make the best DJ?
Mistopheles.
Mistopheles, yeah, he's
for sure. Yeah, because he not only just EDM-y, but he also he's putting on a show for people, which is sort of like what we do now. I feel like as DJs, it's just everything is like a show. Mm-hmm. So I feel like he would have the best presence for that, and yeah, for sure.
And which cat do you think would make the best Peloton instructor?
Probably Victoria, because I think she would do crazy with like some bar or Pilates classes.
I had Victoria or Bomb, like one of those two I think would be great at it. Although I could see Mistopheles also being really strong at that.
Cut to me trying to get all of the Peloton instructors to dress up as cats this year for Halloween.
I'm here for it. If they need advice, if they need someone to come in and let them know, I can give them some like, hey, if you want to embody this character, here's how you do it.
These are your 3 words.
Yeah, these are. I've got them. I found them documented now, so I've got it.
Which I have to say, I didn't even know that was a thing until you had mentioned it.
I didn't know anything until all of a sudden, first couple interviews, people are just like, "Yeah, here are my 3 words," and I was like, "This makes more sense." Like, this is what you're given to work with because you're not given a story in most cases.
Which is really, really funny because like I was looking through them and it's like syllabub, dreamy, yearning, curious, and I'm like, yearning, okay.
Yeah.
See, and I always feel like she would have been Grisabella's daughter.
That very possible.
Like I always saw it as sort of like an estranged, like familial sort of thing, and that's why they do the whole like slow touch at the end, that kind of like weird.
You can almost argue almost every cat to be related to almost every other cat if you dig in. It's it's a very incestuous group. The
entire show is feral.
If you dig in, and then they all have their ball together. It's it's definitely there.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get into the question about the wrong cat that dies. So, are you going to defend Grisabella or are you going to argue for somebody else? And then I'll give you my arguments.
The only person I would defend Grisabella only if it's not McCavity.
McCavity? Okay, give me your McCavity defense.
Because it's just, he's the only one that like, you literally have this like utopian, feline society where everybody's just sort of singing, dancing, and what's better? They're singing songs about themselves. So it's just like, here, let me just give you everything that there is to know about me and, just shake it a little bit. But McCavity comes in and is just like the womp womp of the whole show where I'm like, why do you got to do that? Yes, we have a great song about you, McCavity, which I definitely support, but it just causes so much terror in the moment that I'm like, I don't need it. We can skip you. You can go. Come back as a better cat.
So your argument is centered around what's best for the tribe is to get rid of McCavity, who's broken every human law that's in his song.
Yep.
So I think that argument is fair.
Yeah.
I think any argument that's not Grisabella is fair. So I'll just I'll keep that. I have heard arguments for McCavity. I think McCavity is, by being older, is technically in the running. To answer your question of how I viewed it, I'll give you my non-serious answer first, and I'll give you my actual thoughtful answer. My non-serious answer is, for everyone who's listened to this, you can fast forward for like probably a minute and you've heard this story. I saw Leona Lewis as Grisabella.
Oh, wow.
And so that was how I went in. That's what I knew. I knew her and great Broadway cast. I'd heard there's a lot of people that were really talented. I didn't, at that point, I don't know anything about Broadway. So I went in, and about halfway through, I'm like, I feel like I'm watching a very, very, very drugged out, bizarre X Factor. And so if I am from that lens and that lens only, if you are the audience at home voting, and if you are an X Factor fan, or not even a fan, but you just have watched enough of it, Simon Cowell likes to pair solos into groups. And a couple of very famous ones like One Direction and Fifth Harmony have come out of this. So I thought Tugger and Mustopheles, who, if you dig deep into the literature fan fiction as well, is a combination that is common.
Stop.
I thought that the two of them should go together. They were really entertaining performances. They were the performances I remember the most about. And I thought that, look, they could be a duo and they'll go together if you're voting on from an X Factor standpoint.
Okay, I definitely get that. And I feel like they're definitely two of the most adaptable for the entire show. They're always doing something. And
they're memorable and fun. Now, that is taking the lens of, this is the X Factor.
Yeah.
We're going to not kill. We're going to promote two to win based off of purely performance. And the only thing that they got to beat is they're going to have a really nice package for Grisabella's redemption story before she performs at the end. And Memory is going to be a tough one. But maybe even if they don't win, they're going to be the ones that are most successful. And so that's kind of how I went. Now, the logical argument that I would make with most people after 70 plus episodes of talking about this is you have to go back to how Old Deuteronomy makes the decision. That is really the crux of it. And there is no answer to this unless maybe Andrew will come clarify for me, because we only have one ball to decide off of. I don't know how he makes the decision last year or next year, but if you're making the decision on redemption or who's most worthy or who deserves to go, I think it's Gus, because I would argue that Grisabella comes back and should spend a year with the tribe, and she should be next year's choice. Why take her and have this whole thing about, we're going to embrace you and accept you back into the tribe. Look how great this is. I'm going to kill you. You're gone and you're going to disappear. And so it's if you're going to bring her back, give her that year to kind of reconnect with the whole tribe, and then let her go next year.
Yeah. No, I definitely see that. And it's actually probably the most logical argument that I've heard. Maybe the only argument I've heard, but it's probably the most logical too. I like that, actually. That makes a lot of sense. But what I always felt like, they never really tell you why she's not a part of the tribe anymore.
The rumor is, and this goes back to how much you believe of backstories, but the rumor is, or one of the rumors that I like to believe, is that she got in bed with McCavity, went off to become super famous, got probably in on hard times, maybe became a sex worker, maybe did some drugs, and is now coming back to her family. And so it's she went out to be big, didn't make it. I kind of had joked for a while, it was the bald Britney Spears phase.
Well, I was going to say
she's coming back, and now it's good timing. You're coming back, and now you've got a resurrection of the career. She's coming home.
Got it. I don't know. I always feel like there was more, because it seems like the way that they really act towards her, she did something awful.
Yeah, she probably ditched them.
Yeah,
and it's a cult. So if you leave the cult, are you welcome back?
This is very, very true. And if there's any any lens point at which to look at cats through, it's through the eyes of a cult.
It's to look through the eyes of a cult, and the fact that they're going to murder a cat every year is why, again, children should not see this show.
Yeah. And I definitely did not. I definitely was not getting that. I didn't really, but again, they don't really explicitly say anything either, because it's when the words heavy side layer enter your vocabulary, you're well, what is that really anyway?
Is
What is
it
that?
the afterlife? Is it a section of the Winter Garden Theater, which was a rumor? Is it like the cats have their 9 lives? Is it on to the next life? Like,
Yeah.
who knows? There is some like nuances too. Like there's a baby Grizz, which is probably just an ensemble character to dance in the beginning.
Yeah.
But opens up some theories of like, is she reborn and watching herself? Like, because she's not in that part. Baby Grizz is not with regular Grizz.
Yeah.
So you could have some cats too.
Well, and it's funny too because she's even like in Jellicle Ball, Jellicle Songs for Jellicle Cats.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like she's in the original one, but she just doesn't have all of the Grizabella-ness on her. It's just like her and like the leotard just acting like a regular cat.
That's Baby
Which
Grizz.
again,
That's
I was
Baby
going to
Grizz.
say. And that didn't, but even that was never like explained.
None of it's explained.
I know, but that's what I'm saying.
You have to read real deep into this to find some through lines, which is what I've done.
Well, and so that's been sort of like my argument about Cats for so long because people always laughed at me about like, how could you defend that? It's not really a great show. And I'm like, it is a great show. It just depends on what you're expecting. Like if you're going there looking at this as if you're trying to find, the next To Kill a Mockingbird, honey, this ain't it, you know? But it's like, if you go there and appreciate and understand like the colliding of talent that was Lloyd Webber, Gillian Lynn, Trevor Nunn, Cameron McIntosh, like all these people, whatever. Like it really was like a moment.
Yeah, and you embrace just being in the whole like experience.
Yeah,
like they're letting you into their world.
Yeah,
that's why I didn't go in with that mindset. So that is a like I wish someone would have warned me.
I don't, but it's hard to warn somebody about cats.
That's true.
Because my husband had 100% never been anywhere near this musical. And it's like, I feel like anybody that I've dated around my life, I'm like, hey, so, there's this thing that I like and it's, I may get a little strange about it from time and time again, and I took him to the theater and he absolutely loved it.
Yeah. It's not my leading conversation with most people I first meet.
Yeah.
I know probably more than I should about one thing in particular. It just happens to be Cats musical.
But you know what? You should lead with that.
How I'm going to start all my conversations is, first of all, before we talk about anything else, I just need to know, how do you think about cats?
Does the name Grizabella mean anything to you?
That is, we could definitely go that route. It is, it's a unique piece to know a lot about. It's a unique niche thing to be involved in. And I'm here for it because the fans are great. The cast is great. It's been running, like every time I criticize it and I'm like, yeah, what do they know? It's like, well, it's been running for 40 years. So
for real.
In my opinion, with the wrong ending, well, it's still selling tickets for 40 years all over the globe on Royal Caribbean cruises and everywhere else. So I'm wrong.
You let me know when you get to your podcast about Starlight Express and I'll walk down that road with you too.
I have heard a lot about it and have not watched it yet, but I've heard I would thoroughly enjoy it. And part of me wants to slowly embrace watching all these things I've never seen. That's how I ended up at Cats the first time, is I was in New York and it's like, I haven't seen a bunch of these quote unquote classics, like all these things that you should see. And I'm here, and I was in temporary housing at the time in the theater district. So I basically was living in a fake, poorly furnished apartment with a suitcase of stuff with all my stuff like on its way to New York. And so, I knew a handful of people. Mm-hmm. So I was like, well, why not? I'm here. Let's go see. As a sports fan, I was like, I'll go watch any Knicks and Nets game anytime anyone wants to go. Yeah. This to me is the equivalent of that. You're seeing the best of their field doing a performance that you're haven't seen, or maybe you've seen, but you're going to get a different experience the next night you see it again.
See, and that's perfect. And I love that because it's like you would to not come from that world and to be so like open-minded. That's what I feel like we all need a little bit more of in the world. So I love that.
Well, I have now seen some stuff that I think are objectively bad, which I won't call out. I saw one recently, but I walked out of theater with two very theater people who were angry, and I was like, I mean, what else was I going to do with this 2.5 hours here? And between 8 and 10:30 on a weekday, like, what are you going to do with that time? Like, I'm going to sit at home and watch Netflix or something. Like, I got to watch really incredible performers do really bad music. Like, it was a really bad show. But like, how bad can it be? Like, what's so wrong with that? Like, to me, it's an experience.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, I don't think I've ever walked out of it. I've walked out of movies, but I don't think I've ever walked out of theater before. I mean, and I've seen like there are some. I mean, I don't want to go off topic with cats. I could do this all day long and talk about this. But there are some that I'm just like, the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
You could go on and on about a bunch of them. If it's pre-2016, I'll have no idea what you're talking about.
But you know what, though? I'm here for your journey, and I think it's super fun.
It has been, it's been an experience, and it's still going.
And I'm going to manifest this for you. You really need to get Liz Calloway on the show.
Liz Calloway, I would love to have on the show. Hopefully that will be happening in the future.
Yeah.
I'm still working on Miss Stoffelis, though. I'm working on. Liz would be great, but I want Miss Stoffelis.
If there's any way that I can help, I absolutely will. And I think that's also the weird thing too. So you want to talk about the effect and how much cats like imprinted on my life, that when social media became a thing, some of the first people I thought to look up was like, Liz Calloway's not on Instagram, is she? And I was like, oh my God, she is. And I was like, who else is on here? And I'm like, Keith Bernardo, Christopher Gattelli, Jacob Brent. I was like, I'm going to find all these people and I'm going to follow them and they're going to have no idea who I am.
Shoot them a message. Most of them are around.
I'm telling you. Well, actually, Liz Calloway and her sister, Ann Hampton Calloway, which I don't know how familiar you are with these people. They are the singers of the Nanny theme song.
Oh.
Ann Hampton Calloway wrote the theme song to the Nanny, and Ann and Liz sing on the.
I don't think I knew that.
Yeah, and they're actually doing a show together in March at 54 Below in New York City.
I did see that. I have, and she's done a couple in the past too. I think 54 Below. I've learned a lot being part of the Broadway Podcast Network, and I know other people on the network have interviewed Liz and plenty of other Cats people. They have a spectrum of very thoughtful podcasts and very humorous podcasts, and then they've got me all the way at the end, on the one end of the spectrum.
Look, I'm just saying that out of any of those names, those are the guests that I hope that you get: Liz Calloway, Keith Bernardo, Jacob Brandt, Nadine Eisenegger. Oh my God, Marlena Daniels. Oh God, I would love to hear her take on all this. I'm like so like geeking out on the inside right now. I can't even remember. I remember those names.
I'm gonna start messaging all of them. I have messages out to a couple of those.
Yeah.
If they're willing to come on record about some of this stuff, is always the fun part.
I feel like Liz would do it. I don't know her, but I feel like Liz would do it.
The Grisabels are always fun because I am immediately coming after their entire character.
True.
Which makes the Grisabella conversations a little bit more difficult. And I'm just like, hey, I loved your performances, but I don't think you should have won.
I know. I think that's hilarious. Or the London cast would probably be so hard to reach.
There's a couple. I've talked to a couple. It's the more recent has been easier because it's also they're more familiar with the source material is more fresh in their mind.
Yeah.
But we're still going. I'm not stopping at 70. There's 40 years and continuing tours and everything for me to continue to talk to. So I've got endless people to work with.
And look, I'm saying if the show ever comes back or in the area, I will absolutely go check that out.
If it comes back, so it's on tour, but it does not come very close to the city.
Of course.
But if it comes back on Broadway or comes back close to the city, I would like to advise on the backstories. That's what I would like to do. I don't want that's all, I'm here for it. I've got the knowledge. I'm ready. I'm inexpensive. I won't charge much. And
I mean, I would very much like to see somebody like sit down and try to thread that needle.
I've tried, and I don't think it's possible.
Because I was going to say, because you get into these weird moments where like other characters like Pouncival, who's in the show but doesn't have a song and nobody really knows who he is, and even like Bustopher Jones comes and goes and that's it.
Yeah, because he becomes Gus.
Yeah,
so he has to. I still think my personal idea that I would like to do, which they'll never do, and they shouldn't do because this would be dramatically changing the show. But when they go on tour, they're at a stop for a couple places at a time. Mm-hmm. I think they should just kill a different character every night.
I think that would be amazing. I think that would be absolutely hilarious.
Give somebody a reason to come in every day. Like you can still sing memory and do everything. You can still do the whole show exactly as is. Yeah. But just send somebody else up at the end. And then the next night, pick a different person and just
keep warning.
Yeah, just keep doing it. And then that way, if you go all 5 days in, Fargo, North Dakota, you would see 5 different versions of the same show, but you get a little flavor mix.
Absolutely. No, I'm very, very here for this.
But what do I know? I have zero experience in theater, in Broadway, or in any other thing to qualify me to do this, besides now 70 episodes talking about why Grisabella was the wrong choice.
Amazing.
That is where we're at.
This is the stuff of legend, see?
This is what happens when you move to New York. You get brought into things that you never expected to get brought into.
Amen.
And that's what's fun about it. Thank you for being here. How can we stay in touch?
You can either follow me at DJ John Michael on Instagram, at DJ John Michael NYC on TikTok, and you can see me in all the Peloton classes, or I DJ in Philadelphia once or twice a month, every month, at Tavern on Kamek in Center City.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being here, humoring me, having this long conversation. It's been amazing.
Anytime.
And thanks for listening to this episode of The Wrong Cat Died, the podcast breakdown of catastrophe. To follow along, you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or anywhere else you listen to podcasts. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at The Wrong Cat Died, or check out our website, thewrongcatdied.com.